The following is an encore presentation of U.S. Modernist Radio, underwritten by the Brent R. Harris Charitable Trust, restorer of Richard Neutra's Kaufman Desert House in Palm Springs and 6 other houses in California, by the E. Jones Conservancy, preserving the legacy of modernist architecture in Northwest Arkansas, efjonesconservancy.org, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Hi, I'm Carol Wedge, the CEO of American Institute of Architects, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. Today, we're revisiting conversations with 2 special guests who have passed away since these interviews were recorded. Architect Paul Rudolph's partner, Ernst Wagner, and Frank Lloyd Wright's grandson, architect Eric Lloyd Wright. Ernst Wagner died in 2024 at the age of 81. A Swiss exchange student who came to New York in 1970, Ernst met architect Paul Rudolph, and the two became lifelong partners, both in architecture and in business. They co-founded the Modulightor Lighting Company and built the landmark Modulightor Building on East 58th Street. After Rudolph's death, Ernst spent nearly 3 decades keeping that legacy alive, founding what has become the Paul Rudolph Institute and opening this iconic building to the public several times a month under the leadership of CEO Kelvin Dickinson. Here's George's conversation with Ernst Wagner, taped in 2015 in Sarasota, Florida.
I really wanted to get to know you a little bit.
That's nice.
Because
Thank you.
I know you're from Switzerland, right?
That's right. I came in 1974, and the first week or second week after the boat landed here in New York, I met Paul, and we were friends since.
How did that happen? How did you meet him?
Socially.
Yeah.
And then I heard about people talking about his work, and was lucky to see his office. He invited me to come and visit his office, and we remained friends all these almost 25 years.
Yes.
We knew each other. He was an incredible, fantastic person, the closest person I've ever had and will have.
Yes.
He was incredibly integer and honest and straightforward, and he told me right at the beginning there, Ernst, when you wouldn't tell me the truth, that really would hurt me. And I never lied, not even a white lie, during all these years.
You were how old when you met?
31.
31, and he was in his 60s?
No, he was 25 years older, 55, 56.
55, okay.
Yeah.
So he was about 20 years older at the time.
25 years.
25 years.
31 to 56 is 25 years. He was born 1918. So in 18 will be his 100th birth year.
Wow.
And I inherited his equity at 246 East 58th Street.
Yes.
And we added 2 more floors, as he wanted it originally to be over at Beekman, so that it could be a meeting place for people interested in architecture. So we want to make an exhibit, and I hope we can drum up people who can consult with us, because that's not at all my field. An exhibit about his work, small, of course, but I feel I want to do that very much.
When the two of you met, you lived together on Beekman Place?
It was a 4-story building. I lived on floor 1 or 6, as it in reality was, because originally it was a 5-story building. Then he added 4 floors, that lived on 6, and he had his bedroom on 9, floor 9.
Oh,
Ninth level. So it was, the building only could have 5 units. So these units, where I was totally at the bottom and he at the top, was one unit. So yes, we lived together, we can say that. But there was a nice enough space in between.
To give you some room.
To give each person his own room. And we did things together, and that Beekman Place thing came together because I helped him. I remember clearly this was in 1976, where the building was for sale for a long time and nobody bought it, and it was available for $300,000.
Wow.
That's
a bargain.
Changed, yeah. And now it's again on the market for $28 million.
Really? $28 million?
Yeah, well, it's not sold, but that's the asking price.
When you met Paul, he was at a time in his career where he was under a lot of criticism by American architects, and he started to move abroad. What was that like?
It was sad. I mean, his fatherland had no work practically, or just small things, additions, renovations. And I think he really suffered from that. He was sad about it, but then a new wave started that was in Asia, Southeast Asia. Growth started, an incredible amount of growth. I mean, I just was a few months ago, I was in China and Hong Kong. And when I compare it from the 70s, mid-70s, today, it's unbelievable. And they had a lot of bad modern architecture, but they chose Paul, gave him big jobs because they understood and could see the quality of his work. And of course, it's regarded now as semi-god, practically.
Why did he fall out of favor in the U.S.?
What's it called? Modernism.
Postmodernism?
Postmodernism was the new rage, new fashion, and of course postmodernism condemned Paul's work totally, or any modernist architect's work. And that, of course, didn't last very long and disappeared, as Paul suspected. He never, unlike other architects, played modernism or did a la modernism, postmodernism.
What was it about countries like Singapore and Hong Kong? How did they see something different in Paul's work? What was attractive to them about?
Well, they didn't like the idea of postmodernism because it remembered them of the colonialistic style.
Yes.
So they preferred the clean modernism to something which was a mishmash between modern and antiquities.
Did Paul have to move to Singapore at any point to manage all this?
No, he traveled. He traveled 2-3 times a year because practically all the work was done there. And some of them were huge projects like the Lippo building. That is maybe the most famous one on the concourse. Excuse me. And then the one in Indonesia, the one with the stepped roofs.
Did Paul have an office in New York full of architects?
No, a very small office. After, I think it was Niagara Falls, he wanted to be a design architect and canceled his insurance. There was a lawsuit, as I mentioned, and the courts finally then decided it was 90%, as I remember, the contractor's fault and 10% his office fault. And at that time, he had 55 architects. And people make mistakes, especially his architecture is not the simplest.
Yes.
It's very complicated.
So was this a school or what was it in Niagara Falls that went awry?
I think it was Niagara Falls, the school, yes.
The school,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. The roof leaked. And, of course, we couldn't say what Frank Lloyd Wright said.
Right. Sit someplace different, I think that's what he said.
It really devastated him.
What year was this?
78, 79. The projects came in non-stop from Southeast Asia, and so he was happy just doing design work. And then the working plans were, of course, done by others, but he wanted to control the design.
So he was a design lead for the projects, and other firms handled the detailing?
And detail and management, big development families.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I understand he still did a number of houses for individuals during that time.
He did. Some of them was always an aesthetic shock when I saw them. Just,
How so?
Well, additions usually, or because it's felt right. When you entered that space the first time, that's my eye. I'm an eye person. Had a shock, an aesthetic shock.
The last house that I have a record for is the Jim Willenborg house.
Willenborg, that must...
Yeah, the last one.
I remember now when you tell me in San Francisco.
In San Francisco?
Yes.
And then before that, it was the Edmund Ching residence in Singapore.
Right. That I have not seen that.
But they built it.
Yeah. And I believe it belongs to the V family. And the architect, a lady architect, who was job captain of the Lippo building, which was built in the 80s and 90s.
Now, Rudolph designed a house for you in Switzerland at one point?
Yes. I inherited 17th century farmhouse, which I planned to renovate, but the figures simply as a rental object wouldn't work.
Yes, too expensive to rent.
Construction is so crazy expensive over there, and that even at that time the interest rate would not have been. But he was so excited. It was like a little boy. Ernst, it's going to be a gem, and probably will be when somebody would want to do that.
When you came to the U.S.,
yes.
Were you in the lighting business as you are now?
No, totally fresh. I just finished B school, Basel University. Knew nothing about light and lighting. I just saw some of the projects he was working on in terms of lighting. And it was like gute Futter, a blizzard, stroke. And then, for instance, the infinity light curtain he designed was just an incredible experience. And I said, "Oh, that's for me. That's the field that interests me." And then he said, "Look, Ernst, I think the lighting industry is not on the right track. I think there are much more possibilities in terms of technical flexibility, modularity, and that's some field that could be innovated. And I will fund it at the beginning," which he did, and I did do the work.
So did you start a company together, or did you buy one?
No, we started it together. Both born in the corner of his model floor. And so we started to tinker and made huge mistakes. Not huge mistakes. It just didn't bring any money. And then I liked the field essentially, and through him learned a great deal. So over the years, it's now has developed in a multi-million-dollar operation. I mean, we work for architects and interior designers, lighting designers. His vision of what lighting should do and be has come to fruition.
So are people seeking you out because of the connection with Paul?
I don't think it hurts, but I'd never want to make it designed or label it designed by Paul Rudolph. He has a number of fixtures there which are constantly one of the best sellers, actually, which are constantly ordered in various variations because it's flexible. It's what the space looks for, essentially. That's what he wanted, and that's what he did, and that makes the concept successful.
Paul Rudolph buildings are known for their very brilliant use of space and materials, but they're also hated by a lot of people who just get really riled about them.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between people that love this work and people that hate this work?
I think we never understood. It's always a surprise why either they hate him or they love him.
Particularly in the last couple of years where you've had government buildings, such as the one in Goshen that was recently destroyed, it seemed as if the politicians locally had just decided that was it and they were going to get rid of it.
Despite all the can I say it?
Illegalities?
Illegalities. Together with a lot of illegalities. I mean, there were government sanctions that they have to get permit for this, that, and the other was all washed away.
Tell me about Paul's life.
Well, he was a very private person. And I wanted to see that people would respect that. But again, people do what they want to do, not what Paul wanted to do. It's one of the sad aspects with the original Paul Rudolph Foundation.
That's the one you started 10 years ago?
I started, and we realized that no way to collaborate together, work together. They just had it on their business card, and that's I guess that's what they wanted. And when I got upset that they were totally inactive and did nothing, then they kicked me out.
And you started a new foundation.
And I said, well, not to Paul and me. I started a new one, and we had then my new manager, whom you know or met or talked to.
Talked to Mark?
Mark Medoff and Seth Wien. They're very capable and active, smart people. And what we can do, we do now and want to prepare for this exhibition in 2018.
And where will that be?
In the new court, that 2 floors that I added.
Oh, in the new 2 floors,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So when you started the original foundation, it just went along and didn't do much for a while?
We started it in 2002. Then in 2005, I had an accident. Then 7 years of hospital stay after hospital stay after hospital stay. And I was very weak and inactive and was hardly alive. And then, but we had then 2 members joined, 3 people joined. My complaints were nothing was done, nothing was undertaken, but absenteeism.
But
we made we wanted to make a work together agreement.
Yes.
And proposed it. We spent tens of thousands of dollars with lawyers and PR people to try to come to a positive result with them. But it was all washed away.
How is it to be the steward of Paul's legacy? I mean, obviously, there's some issues with different organizations competing for the foundation, but what other issues do you have to deal with in handling his legacy?
I would like to get input from the outside. I mean, one of the activities is to steer the Library of Congress and Museum of Modern Art towards a Paul Rudolph exhibit, the big one.
All right.
But that takes years and years. And MoMA would have the means to organize the budget, probably.
Other than the Modulightor building,
Yeah.
which of course you're living in now, right, as well?
Right.
And have your lighting business in.
Yes, yes.
Are there any plans for a Paul Rudolph site, perhaps one of his buildings or houses that would be a museum to Paul?
Well, he gave me his part for while I'm alive.
Yes.
And I want to give the building back to Paul as a charitable organization so that it can be what he originally had planned for at Beekman Place, namely a meeting place for the architectural community where there can be exchanges, exhibits, lively organization. We already now have practically every week having design school classes, or there's a new thing called architectural tourism.
Yes.
From all over the world, there are groups coming, Russia, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, French. I mean, then we have open houses every first Friday of every month. And then, as I said, the design school classes. Or then also out-of-towners come and can visit when they make an appointment. I want the house be accessible.
So you plan to have the house be the museum?
Yes.
Have there been any houses or buildings that have wanted to become museums for Paul? I mean, I would think with his reputation around the world that some independent effort would be made to do that.
I'm hoping for this now, but nobody has knocked on my door.
Okay.
When you know of somebody, please, that's my plan.
Well, I know that the Borough's Welcome Complex in where I live, we helped them make decisions about which part of the building to preserve. They tore down everything but the original ziggurat-shaped building because in the back were mostly lab buildings that were not particularly attractive or useful anymore. And they're going to turn that into a visitor center for a pharmaceutical company. But it will have historical exhibits about Rudolph in it, I assume.
Well, that's a venue. Then also, you know about Joe King.
Joe King, yes.
He has, with his friend, he has a traveling exhibit.
Oh, he does? Is that going to be what the Walker Guest House is going to be part of?
Probably. It's because they made a book about the Florida houses.
Christopher Domin
and Joseph King. Yeah. And they have also put together traveling. I met very briefly yesterday Joe King, and I will see him hopefully again this weekend.
Yes.
But that's maybe a possibility that we can house their exhibit, because I know nothing about making exhibits.
Right.
It's a specialty.
Yes, it is quite an art to curating an exhibit.
Yeah, it's not. I must look for help. And Fort Petros from the Library of Congress said that he would have some idea, and we would like to get his advice. I only briefly saw him yesterday at the opening of the Walker House.
How would you like to have Paul remembered, Ernst?
That's very emotional.
Yeah.
Well, certainly positive. Forbild means a example of truthfulness, sincerity, and integrity throughout. Yeah.
I've tried to find video of Paul. There are very few videotapes of him.
Yeah. Do you know the one that we both know?
Spaces. Bob Eisenhart?
Bob Eisenhart. They went down there to the Architectural Film Center
yes.
and saw it again and spoke with him. And what we verbally agreed upon was that we would make it available on our website.
Good.
so people can purchase it. He, of course, is interested in getting some revenue because he spent a lot of time as a young man, now 30 years later. And why not? Why should he not?
Sure. Well, good. Do you know when that's going to happen?
I think he said he has to do some technical stuff with editing, and then he would get back to me. I have his contact now.
Okay.
So, I mean, we are ready to do it. I have a secretary who can send these envelopes out. It's no big deal.
Well, what you'll want to do to capture the digital market, people are not buying DVDs anymore very much.
No.
They're buying something streaming through the web.
Okay.
So you can set up a movie on iTunes, for instance, and people can purchase the movie, and then it goes right to their computer.
That's amazing. Then I will convey that to Bob, because I was shocked when I saw him. I remember him as a young man 30 years ago. Now all of a sudden, are we both old guys now?
Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate your coming by.
George, I don't know how to thank you. And thank you for Paul, your engagement towards Paul. And that's a great thing that you can have put together. Because I think architecture is one of the most beautiful and most valuable things America ever produced. That is modern American architecture, and especially the kind that Paul made.
Thank you, Ernst.
Our second interview today is with Eric Lloyd Wright, who died in 2023 at the age of 93. The grandson of legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright and the son of architect Lloyd Wright, Eric apprenticed at Taliesin, worked on the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, served as a conscientious objector in Korea, and spent decades restoring his family's buildings across the country. Recorded back in 2017, here's George's conversation with Eric Lloyd Wright.
Welcome, Eric.
Well, thank you. Privileged to be on your program.
So, Eric, you've been working for, 30 years on your own house? Is this like the shoemaker not having any shoes for his own kids?
I think it is. It's a labor of love.
Tell us a little bit about how you found this site for the house and how this long construction project started.
Well, the site was actually found by my father. When I was in high school, he and I used to go through what is called the Santa Monica Mountains here in Los Angeles, looking for sites that had a good view of the ocean and of the San Fernando Valley. And he, after several years looking, found this site in Malibu overlooking the Pacific with a spectacular view, just spectacular. It's up at 2,000 feet, and it gets above the smog level of the city. And it's still mountainous and with a lot of native vegetation on it. It hasn't been as cleared and developed as other parts of the area. My father always wanted to build on it, but never could quite get things together to get the money or the time. So I said, well, I'm not going to end up not having lived on the land. So I said, I'll just start construction and see what happens, do as much as I can. And being an architect, I couldn't get a very big loan. Architects don't make very much money. It's surprising. Most people don't understand. Architecture really is an act of love, a love of the environment and shaping the physical form of society. It's very important, but it is also an art form as well as a business, as well as science, technology, engineering. It incorporates everything that we use to create our modern civilization. The architect is involved. So that's one of the reasons I've been struggling along with my project, and it's about 70% complete.
So are you going to bill yourself for services rendered? I imagine that would be a high amount.
Yes, it would be.
Are you in the home now?
No. I'm next to the home. What we did is we set up some storage containers and then spanned between the storage containers so you don't have the look of a storage container, and you can have spaces that flow and aren't boxed in like a storage container. And so we live in these, what I call temporary structures.
Temporary for 30 years?
Yeah, temporary for 30 years.
Your wife must have a lot of patience. I know that my wife would not put up with that more than about 3 months.
No, she is amazing. Of course, being able to live up here on the land is just such a blessing in itself. I could do it if I had to pitch a tent.
I imagine when your father bought the land in 1956, he bought it for some amazing price that was maybe high then, but was a deal now. 24 acres in Malibu is quite a spread.
Well, we're up in the mountains. As I said, we're 2,000 feet up. And it was, at that time, it was considered outside the commute area of Los Angeles. So the prices of land were quite low, and it was all native shrub. There was no electricity, no water, and we had to wait for the electricity to be brought up on our county road.
Eric, you were a student of your grandfather's. I was wondering how that was for you. Was he meaner to you than the other students, or less mean, or how did it work?
I think he was less mean.
Less mean.
What I want to say is that he spent a lot of time with the students, and he didn't treat me any differently than he did his other apprentices. He didn't like the term student, he liked the term apprentice. And we were truly apprentices because our learning was learning by doing. And we learned about architecture by actually building structures, by going out and supervising, by creating the drawings. All of that was done by the apprentices. And all of Taliesin West in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is his winter home, was built by the apprentices. So my treatment was what all the other apprentices had. I wasn't especially favored. Well, I was a little bit because I could go and have 2 or 3 times a week I had dinner with them, my grandparents. It was a really wonderful experience to have him come in the drafting room and sit down beside you. Our stools that we had could always seat up to 2 people. And he would come and sit down beside you and critique your drawing that you were doing of his work. So you were actually experiencing the creation of these great architectural works right before your eyes. It was quite an experience.
Your father was an apprentice to him as well, right?
My father was, yes, in the very early days, although he had been drawing for my grandfather since he was 15, living in Oak Park, Illinois. He worked in the office there for my grandfather and went to the University of Wisconsin for a year where he studied agriculture, landscape work, and eventually became a landscape architect as well as a regular architect.
Your father, Lloyd Wright, must have had some discussions with you about what your career would be. Was it just always assumed that you would go into architecture too, or did you have another passion like wanting to be an actor or wanting to be a plumber or something like that? I mean, was it always assumed you'd become an architect?
Well, originally, this is when I was about 15. I wanted to really be a farmer, animal husbandry. I loved animals. I liked the idea of farming, being out on a farm.
How did that go over with your father and grandfather?
Oh, they were very sympathetic to it. In fact, my grandfather said, well, why don't you come back in the summer to Taliesin in Wisconsin. That's his Wisconsin home. We have a farm. We raise dairy and chickens, and you can work on our farm in the summer. So I thought, that sounds wonderful. So I took him up on it and came to spend the summer. I worked on the farm and also did construction work. We were always building something. And the young apprentices that were there were just not much older than I was. So I started making friends with them. There were quite a few apprentices who were there just out of high school. And I had helped them at night with making models and working on doing duplicate drawings. I loved it. It was really a marvelous experience. And the enthusiasm, especially of the young apprentices who were there for my grandfather and his work and the way we lived, it was a very wonderful community living that we had at Taliesin. When I came home, I said, by golly, I really loved architecture. I loved all the models that we had around the drafting room and the drawings. It was really a magnificent, creative environment. And I said, architecture is really where I want to go. I want to be working with nature, not against it, but for it. This is one of the wonderful ways of doing that, being an architect. I asked him, my grandfather, if I could come and join the fellowship, whose Taliesin Architecture was called the Fellowship, the Taliesin Fellowship. And he said, well, certainly you can come ahead when you graduated from high school. So when I graduated from high school, I went to work with my grandfather.
And there was no turning back from that point?
No way. It was too ingrained, too wonderful. And what could be done for society by being an architect was wonderful. It still is wonderful. I'm not always in sympathy with all the building forms that are going on today. A lot of it, I feel, is just to be different, to be unique. And that to be different and unique should come out naturally out of the work. It shouldn't be forced on it. And so much architecture is. Although I'm surprised at just how much is work that is not really moving forward, but is static, almost retrograde. We've almost gone back to the 20s. Here, especially in Southern California, with Mediterranean style and just builder-style houses.
There are a lot of those, that's for sure.
There was a start at one time at the end of World War II when companies like, it's called Eichler Homes.
Oh, sure.
In San Francisco and L.A. They were doing some very interesting work, what people call modernist today. Of course, it's interesting your term modernist, because I've always thought of modern means of today, and these houses were designed before today, but they are of today in a sense. But what surprised me was we were starting down that road towards Eichler Homes, and there was the work of my father and Schindler, Neutra, that was presenting what we call modern architecture of today. But that has basically died out. It never really has taken a hold. It's only a few special houses, but the developers are not taking that form. They're taking retrograde forms and modified ranch houses. Now, the original ranch house was actually started by Frank Lloyd Wright. That was the early Usonian houses. And he developed what is now called the open plan.
Oh, yes.
Where the dining room, actually what happens, you go from the living room to the dining area, which is still part of the living room. and the kitchen was open to the living room. That way he could build these small homes that were about 1,000 square feet. He called them Usonian houses. And he was hoping that this would be something that the average person could afford. And he did have. He designed them for teachers, for a mailman, and for other people. It was to be an architecture of the people. And he kept working with those forms, even though he was this great architect who had produced falling water and eagle feather and all brass. He would go and produce these small little 1,000 square foot houses, some of them built by the owner. So he was always very interested in what could be the architecture for the average American, the middle class. He said, we should give them an architecture that they deserve. Now, the type of work that he was doing in the 30s is called modernist. We always love labels. So now it's modernist.
Eric, did the fashion of naming a house come from your grandfather, or did that from the clients themselves? Because it seemed like many of his projects had a nickname.
They did. I think it was a combination. But the houses that I worked on, he usually named it. When he was doing the sketches, preliminary studies, he would give it a name. And it would be some kind of organic, woodsy name sometime, or a Native American name. It was always a beautiful name associated with it. Well, if you could take all brass, originally it was the Old Brass Plantation in South Carolina, and he changed it to Ald Brass. He liked
the Old English.
Scottish English.
And there is a tradition in the British Isles of naming houses.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's a better nickname than the Gherkin, which is a very famous building in London.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Eric, you were involved, and not many people know this, I think, in designing the Guggenheim, one of the most famous museums in the world, and certainly in New York, against which there was a lot of resistance to that kind of architecture in Central Park. Can you tell us about what it was like to work on that project?
I had a very small part in that. I was a draftsman doing detailing work and some planning. I remember working out how we work out the restaurant and so forth and getting it to fit in. But I love the renderings of the Guggenheim. There were several different renderings made of it, and then worked on the model. That was a wonderful experience, building the model. Model was built by the apprentices. By the time I got onto it, Solomon Guggenheim had passed away, and Hilla Rebbe, his associate, I think had passed away as well when I came to the fellowship. So I didn't have the experience of knowing Mr. Guggenheim.
I'm struck when I go into the Guggenheim and you get past the initial entryway that there are these tiny little elevators which seem way too small for the building. But then when you get to the top floor and it opens up, that typical Wright experience of the discovery of the building really hits you there on the top floor.
Yeah, that's right. Now, things like elevators, restrooms, and other things, he was always undersizing. They were elements that can be modified to a point that is too much. And of course, the elevators of the Guggenheim are too small. As you say, you do have that compression. You're packed into this little elevator. You go up and you're released under this glass skylight, and it's just a marvelous sense of environment and marvelous sense of the atmosphere around you to have that experience. And of course, that's the same way with entering the Guggenheim. You enter it low as a low walkway going in, leading in, and then it takes you into the central area of the spiral, and that explodes up above you, and it's exciting, just exciting experience to have that open up. And that's the wonderful thing about the Guggenheim. I consider it one of the really great organic buildings. My grandfather labeled his architecture as organic architecture. It means working with nature, natural elements, the natural ability of human beings. And that entrance to the Guggenheim is a marvelous projection of space, because you come in, as I said before, a low ceiling, and then it opens up into this marvelous spiral space with a glass skylight. And what he did with the spiral is it just isn't this spiral on top of itself. The spiral gets bigger as it goes up, so that when you get to the glass skylight, you just explode out into space.
The Guggenheim is, of course, one of New York's most beloved buildings, but at the time, and certainly during its construction and planning, people hated it.
Yeah, it was too bad. They didn't understand the building. And it wasn't until they had a Calder exhibition, that is, Calder had these moving pieces of sculpture that would move with just a breath of air. And he hung them all through the space in the museum. And that was three-dimensional in that you could get all around the piece of sculpture. They didn't understand, too, that he had, when he built the walls, the spiral going up, the walls leaned approximately 5% back. And he said, well, that's the way a painter's easel is. A painter's easel is never vertical. It's always slightly tilted. And that's the way the artist is looking at his work. And I want to give the visitors to the museum the same experience as the artist. Also, pitching them back, he had lighting built into the concrete slab, and that shown over the drawings. What the unfortunate part of the building of the museum is that my grandfather had already died when they were finishing it, and the curator, Sweeney, had them take out the mechanisms that mounted the painting against the wall, and he put metal brackets sticking out of the wall, pipes coming out of the wall, holding the paintings vertical, just what my grandfather was trying to avoid. And he was trying to get back to have the artist had it on a leaning easel.
I want to talk about your father, Frank Lloyd Wright, Jr., known as Lloyd Wright. In doing some of the research about him, I was really amazed how little information is out there compared to how much information is out there about your grandfather, even though your father did a tremendous number of buildings and houses and was embraced by a lot of the Hollywood community. Did he feel like he was working under the shadow of your grandfather, or why aren't we seeing more about Lloyd Wright?
I think it's working under the shadow. When there's four great modernist architects who lived in Los Angeles at that time, there was Schindler, there was Neutra, there was my father and my grandfather.
Because Lautner came along later, right?
Yes. He was working at the same time that Schindler and Neutra were working in Los Angeles. They came along in the late 20s, and my father was the same period as Neutra and Schindler. And they were getting more exposure than my dad because of my grandfather. My grandfather was getting a tremendous amount of exposure. I remember hearing about how Neutra and Schindler had an exhibition of their work, and they wanted to have an exhibition with grandfather.
Yes.
As part of it. But he said, I will, but it has to be of my work. Otherwise, I won't participate. So when they put up their exhibition, they they had the three of them, Frank Lloyd Wright, Schindler on the right side, Neutra on the left side, and my grandfather's portrait in the middle. That was the entrance to the exhibit. And my grandfather was just furious that they were just using him to capitalize his name for their work. But a friend of his, who was the art critic of the Los Angeles Times, turned to him and said, Frank, don't get so mad at them. Christ was crucified between two thieves.
Well put.
So that was his feeling. He was concerned about his work, and he wanted really more control.
Eric, I read a lot where your grandfather, of course, had many apprentices, many fans, many clients. I didn't read where he had a lot of colleagues, that people he would just kind of hang out with and would be friends. Did he have that kind of community as well?
No, it wasn't so much that community. Of course, the Taliesin's were always out in the country, both in Wisconsin and Arizona. They weren't right in the city, although Arizona now is, and Taliesin West. But Taliesin, Wisconsin is still, it's out in the countryside. You're 40 miles west of Madison. So there wasn't a lot of day-to-day or week-to-week contact with other people because of the distances. So what he would do is he would invite people out to spend the weekend at his house.
You had to come to him, though.
That's right. They had to come to him, and they had to stay over a day at least.
Was there ever a client of your father's or your grandfather's that intimidated them?
I don't think so. Certainly not of my grandfather. He had a presence that just made people respond positively towards him. There wasn't any feeling of wanting to get into an argument.
He was very imposing, I understand.
He did have arguments occasionally. He had a nature that he could get very angry with people if they were really making what he felt was major mistakes or major misunderstandings.
I understand it was quite unusual to get a compliment from your grandfather.
He was not too easy with his compliments, although I will say for the young students, and there were many of them who were there like I was, just out of high school, he was very patient, and would every day always sit down with one or two of them, see what they were doing, and to critique their work. And then we had what was called the birthday box, and that was that we would, on my grandfather's birthday, June 8th, we would all make a drawings of hypothetical buildings that we would design. And we would give that to him as either the birthday box or the Christmas box twice a year. And he would critique the drawings. And he was very good at critiquing. He didn't get too upset, except if you were older. If you had been an apprentice for 5 or 6 years with him, he did expect a lot more from you, and he could really get angry.
And with other professional architects, his praise was fairly limited.
Very limited.
Eric, in the birthday box and the Christmas box, these critiques, would you consider that that was a gift from your grandfather?
Well, I considered it like a gift. All the apprentices were eager to do this, to get his opinion of what your work was and how you were progressing. We all look forward to these boxes.
Eric, in this generation, you have two sons, right? Devin and Corey?
Yes.
Did they go into architecture or their kids? I mean, how far along has this gone in your genealogy?
Well, my oldest son is a landscape contractor, and my youngest son is a musician. So we sort of branched out.
Did it skip a generation? Are any of your grandchildren in design?
No, I've got a grandchild, but she's only 2 years old, 2.5. So we'll see.
Maybe you should start a birthday box for her.
Yeah.
That's right. She's a wonderful drawer. She loves to draw.
I wanted to ask you on a different note. You did a house for, I think it was your half-brother and his wife, Anais Nin?
Yes. Yes, that was a house in an area we call Silver Lake in Los Angeles. And my brother was a teacher, and Anais was a writer, very well-known feminist writer. So my brother is really my half-brother. He's Rupert Pohl, and he had me do their house for them. It was a small little Usonian house, very nice. It was 1,000 square feet.
Rupert and his wife were very influential at a time in Los Angeles where this bohemian culture was growing. They would hang out with Schindler, as I read, and they would hang out with other actors and poets and musicians and created this kinds of artistic culture, which we see in so many cities today. But at that time, it really was going full strength in Los Angeles.
Yes, it was, and they were part of that whole movement, and they were in touch with people who were very active in developing that advanced bohemian. It really wasn't so much bohemian as just advanced artists that had a unique form, style of writing, form of drawing. And it was not just Los Angeles, but it also included San Francisco.
Did you keep in touch with Anais throughout her life?
Yes, I did. She would occasionally invite me and Mary, my wife, over for what used to be called soirees, parties at her house with different artists.
The parties of that group were notorious in Los Angeles as being the fun places to go.
Well, I don't know if they were notorious, because they were the group that I knew of with Anais. These were all forward-thinking philosophers, writers. I mean, really a wonderful, educated group, as well as being nonconformist artists. It was quite an atmosphere.
One last question, Eric. Who are your favorite architects today? Whose work do you really like?
I like the Spanish architect.
Calatrava?
Yes, Calatrava. I think he's done some wonderful work. I like Foster.
Norman Foster in London?
Yeah, in England. And then, those are pretty much
Okay.
I feel.
Thank you so much, Eric, for being on with us today. I really enjoyed having you.
Well, I was very glad to be on. My memory isn't as sharp as it should be, but I hope that I've spread some light on the background of my grandfather and my background.
This was an encore presentation of U.S. Modernist Radio, underwritten by the Brent R. Harris Charitable Trust, restorer of Richard Neutra's Kaufman Desert House in Palm Springs and 6 other houses in California. By the E. Fay Jones Conservancy, preserving the legacy of modernist architecture in Northwest Arkansas. efayjonesconservancy.org. And by Diane Bald and the Bubman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Visit USModernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Gild. Listen to any of our over 400 shows at usmodernist.org.